The gavel hit the desk, sharp, final. "Mrs. Green," the judge said, voice neutral, "we believe you are no longer mentally fit to manage your own affairs." For a moment, everything blurred. Then I turned and saw Jenny, my daughter, the girl I'd rocked through night terrors, the woman I'd mortgaged my home to send to therapy. She was smiling, not a nervous smile, a practiced one, the kind you rehearse in front of a mirror. That's when I knew. This wasn't worry. This was a setup. I wasn't perfect. I cried more than I should have, forgot appointments, but I paid the bills, kept the lights on. I showed up. What Jenny didn't know is I kept the receipts, emails, prescriptions, and that voicemail. She's not crazy. She's just in the way. When that played in court, the silence was louder than any scream. I wasn't always unfit. I was a teacher for 32 years, high school English. I led Shakespeare recitals, ran book drives, and paid off my mortgage before 60. I raised Jenny alone after her father left, and I never once asked for help. She was my world. Jenny had always been delicate. Even as a child, she'd cry before class presentations and break into hives when we traveled. At 16, they called it generalized anxiety disorder. I called it something we'd handle together. So we did. Therapy, medication, late-night talks. I read every book I could find on mental health, drove her to appointments, took days off work, and when she came home after college, I gave her the master bedroom, said she needed the space. When she couldn't keep a job, I said, "We'll figure it out." And we did. Me dipping into my retirement to cover her co-pays, prescriptions, and grocery bills. Still, I thought we were close. She called me her rock. She'd leave little notes in the kitchen. "Thanks for always showing up, Mom." But at some point, something shifted. She started double-checking my prescriptions, offering to take over the bills just in case. When I forgot a neighbor's name at the grocery store, she squeezed my arm and whispered, "It's okay, Mom. Just one of those days." I thought she was being kind. Then came the letter, a petition filed by Jenny, requesting a full cognitive evaluation and temporary guardianship for my safety. I blinked at the envelope for a long time, thinking maybe it was a mistake. But then I saw the report. Subject exhibits confusion, lack of self-care, and increasing paranoia, as observed by her daughter. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because, for a moment, I wondered if she was right. After the report, things got quieter. Not peaceful, just quieter. The kind of quiet where someone starts locking doors they never used to, where mail goes missing, and conversations stop when you walk into the room. Jenny didn't bring up the evaluation again. She acted like nothing had changed, still made tea in the mornings, still kissed my cheek before bed. But I noticed she started doing all the talking, for me. At church, when a neighbor asked how I was, I smiled and opened my mouth. "She's been a little forgetful lately," Jenny cut in gently, squeezing my hand. "Just age, nothing to worry about." I froze, just for a second, tried to speak again, but she smiled wider, like I'd interrupted my own sentence. Her eyes softened, but her grip on my hand didn't. The neighbor gave me that look, that soft, pitying look, like they'd already made up their minds. At the grocery store, the clerk asked me how my day was. Jenny answered. At home, she reminded me to take pills I'd already swallowed, told me I left the lights on, unplugged the coffee pot, just in case. I told myself she was just being cautious, that maybe I was slipping, until Mrs. Porter, my neighbor of 20 years, pulled me aside in the driveway. "Jenny told me you've been struggling to take care of yourself," she said softly. "She said you get confused, sometimes forget where you are." My stomach dropped. That night, I confronted Jenny. She didn't yell, didn't flinch. "Don't worry, Mom," she said, brushing a crumb from my sweater. "I'm just trying to protect you." That's when it hit me. This wasn't love. This wasn't care. This was a quiet campaign. And somewhere along the way, I'd become the villain in her story. Do you still trust someone when their love starts to erase you? A week after that driveway conversation, a large envelope arrived. No return address, just my name, typed in neat block letters. Inside, a copy of the full psychological assessment Jenny had requested. I sat at the kitchen table, fingers trembling just enough to make the pages slip. It wasn't the test itself that rattled me. I hadn't taken any formal test. It was the quotes. Mother has become increasingly erratic. She confuses appointments, repeats herself often, and has accused neighbors of spying on her. I blinked. I never said that. Not once. Not even close. There were more. Subject has refused to eat meals prepared for her and has shown signs of paranoia toward her daughter. I stared at the line. I had skipped dinner once because Jenny brought home spicy takeout, knowing full well it upset my stomach. I'd told her, gently, "Next time, can we get something lighter?" She'd rolled her eyes, muttered, "You always think I'm out to get you." And apparently, that made it into a file, a permanent record. I flipped to the final page. There it was, a section labeled Family Input, Jenny's name, her signature. She had sat down, told someone I was paranoid, disoriented, and a danger to myself, and they believed her, without ever speaking to me, without stepping foot in my home. No interviews, no home visit, no second opinion, just her word, and a paper trail. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady my breathing. Was this why my checking account froze last week? Why the pharmacy suddenly asked for guardian verification before filling my prescription? The pieces clicked into place like a lock turning. She hadn't just told people I was slipping, she was building a case. And the worst part? Somewhere in the back of my mind, I had started to doubt myself too. You expect strangers to misunderstand you, but when it's your own daughter rewriting your story, who do you call for help? 2 days later, my debit card was declined at the pharmacy. I thought it was a glitch. I'd just paid the electric bill that morning. The cashier smiled politely. Maybe try again. I did. Same result. Back home, I opened my laptop to check my balance, except the screen just blinked back at me. Access denied. Your account is temporarily restricted due to third-party guardianship authorization. My heart sank. Jenny. I checked the kitchen drawer where I kept all my account info, my checks, my tax records, my passwords. Gone. I stood there in the middle of the room, not knowing whether to scream or sit down. Later that evening, I asked her, "Did you do something with my bank account?" She was in the living room, folding laundry, calm as anything. "It's for your protection, Mom." She didn't even look up. The doctor's report raised concerns. "I just wanted to make sure nothing gets missed. You've been forgetting things lately." I opened my mouth, closed it. What was I supposed to say? That I wasn't forgetting? That she was twisting everything? She offered to take over the bills and suggested I give her temporary access to the house deed just to make things easier. And suddenly, I saw it clearly. This wasn't one decision. This was a strategy. Little by little, piece by piece, she was removing me from my own life, not with anger, not with shouting, with concern, with kindness, with care that cut like paper. And the worst part? I started catching myself asking permission for groceries, for a checkbook, even for the thermostat, like I was a guest in my own home. When someone steals your power slowly, with a smile, by the time you notice, it might already be gone. It wasn't just the money. Soon, I realized I was being erased from other places, too, quieter places. Jenny started attending my senior group on my behalf. "Mom's been overwhelmed lately," she'd tell them. "I just wanted to update everyone." She'd stand there, poised, confident, updating people on my life, what meds I was taking, what I was struggling with, what the care plan was. By the time I showed up to a meeting, just once, unannounced, the room went still. People smiled, but their eyes didn't match. Mrs. Dugan offered me tea 3 times in 10 minutes. Someone whispered, I didn't think she'd still be coming. That night, I opened the fridge and found my favorite yogurt labeled with Jenny's name. Post-it notes started showing up around the house. Please don't adjust the thermostat. Medication schedule, do not change. Property under review, no modifications without consent. My house didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a set, like I was walking through a version of my life that had been rewritten. And then came the letter from the county. Jenny had filed a temporary housing transfer request, citing her as my primary caregiver and suggesting I transition into assisted living within the next 90 days. It wasn't legally binding. Not yet, but the damage was done. My neighbors whispered. The church ladies stopped calling. Even the mailman looked at me differently. Jenny still smiled, still made tea, still kissed my forehead like she was tucking in a child. But everything in me knew I was being moved out before I even packed a bag. Sometimes they don't need to take the house. They just convince the world it's no longer yours. The day I found the realtor's card in the trash was the day something in me snapped. I wasn't on the deed, never had been. The house was bought in my husband's name back in '86. After he left, I paid every bill, every repair, but I never updated the paperwork. Jenny must have known that, and now she had the report, the bank, and the sympathy of every neighbor on our street. But what she didn't have, my records. I started slow. I pulled out a shoebox from the closet, old receipts, tax forms, utility bills, with my name printed month after month. I found the caregiver contract I drafted, but never signed. Notes from doctors, emails where I scheduled every single one of her therapy sessions, even the thank you card she wrote me 2 years ago. I'd be lost without you, Mom. I scanned everything, labeled every file. Then I called Susan. Susan and I taught at the same school for 20 years. After retirement, she went to law school. For fun, she said. Now she handled elder law cases, mostly pro bono. She showed up the next day with a yellow legal pad, a quiet voice, and steel in her eyes. We went through every document, drew timelines, matched Jenny's claims against hard proof. We built our own case, not with anger, but with order. Don't confront her yet, Susan warned. Let her think she's already won. So I played along. I let Jenny leave her notes, let her adjust the thermostat, let her talk over me in front of strangers. But behind closed doors, I was writing the story she thought I'd forgotten, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. She thought I was unraveling, but I was documenting. And the next time she spoke for me, I'd let the tape do the talking. We waited for the second evaluation, court mandated, neutral psychiatrist, not the one Jenny handpicked. Susan told me, say less, let the paperwork speak first. So I walked in with a binder, labeled, tabbed, dated, emails, medical schedules, tax returns, voice memos, and one recording, a quiet little clip from a Thursday morning, Jenny in the kitchen. She's not crazy, she's just in the way. If I can get her declared incapable, I get the house and no probate. She won't fight. She never does. I remember pressing record that day with trembling fingers. Now, I played it from my phone, volume turned up, not saying a word. The psychiatrist sat very still. So did the clerk. Jenny's eyes didn't widen. She just crossed her arms. You're seriously going to use that? She snapped. You're turning this into some kind of revenge? I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because in that moment, the weapon wasn't the audio. It was the silence that followed it. No yelling, no crying, just stillness. Wait. For once, I didn't explain myself. I didn't rush to soften the blow. I let the facts breathe, and for the first time in months, they listened. She used emotion to silence me, so I let her own words speak louder than mine ever could. The story didn't stay in the courtroom. The judge ruled in my favor, of course. Guardianship revoked. Financial access restored. Independent evaluation declared me fully competent. Jenny's petition dismissed. But what came after was messier. A local reporter picked it up. Elder abuse via mental health claims. Her words, not mine. The clip of Jenny's voice, "She's not crazy, she's just in the way," made the rounds online, quietly, but enough to leave an echo. At church, the pastor hugged me a little longer than usual. One of the choir ladies whispered, "We never should have assumed." I nodded. I smiled. But something in me had shifted. I didn't want their pity. I didn't need their redemption. What I wanted was space. Jenny didn't move out. Not right away. She made herself scarce, stayed in her room. Dishes started piling up in the sink. She stopped labeling the yogurt. One afternoon, I found her standing in the kitchen, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. "You made me look evil," she said, voice low. "You humiliated me." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. "No," I said. "You did that. I just pressed play." She left the next week, quietly. No goodbye. The mailman stopped double-glancing. Neighbors waved again. One even brought a pie. Peach, my favorite. But none of it felt like a win, because no one talks about what happens after you get your voice back, after the house gets quiet again, after the campaign ends and the campaigner leaves. I got my freedom back, but it came at the cost of something else. You prove you're still whole, but what do you do with the silence that's left behind? I kept the chair by the window, the one Jenny once called my thinking spot. I never said it out loud, but I liked that she noticed. Now it's where I sit in the mornings, coffee in hand, sunlight falling across the floor, the house finally mine again, quiet, still. Some days I forget what peace sounds like. After months of being watched, second-guessed, translated, like I couldn't speak for myself, silence feels like a stranger I'm still learning to trust. But I'm getting there. The bills are back in my name. The bank sent a letter apologizing for the freeze. Even the pharmacist smiled and said, "Welcome back, Mrs. Green." The funny part is, no one ever meant to be cruel. Not the neighbors, not the church ladies, not even Jenny, maybe. Control doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like a to-do list with someone else's name at the top, a soft voice that decides for you, a hand that helps until it holds too tight. I don't hate her. I miss her. Not the woman with the binder and the guardianship papers, the girl who used to cry in my bed at 2 a.m. and whisper, "I'm scared, Mom. Don't leave." I didn't, and I still haven't. But I've learned that sometimes boundaries are a form of love too. We talk now, not often, carefully. She sends postcards from her new apartment, always signed, "Love you, Mom." And I write back, slowly, truthfully, because love, the real kind, doesn't erase people. It sees them, even when they're messy, even when they forget, even when they fall apart and come back together differently. I don't know if Jenny and I will ever be what we were, but I know who I am again, and maybe that's where healing starts. If you're listening to this and you've ever been made to feel small, if someone rewrote your story while you were still living it, if you've ever doubted your own memory, your own voice, your own mind, I hope you hear me when I say you are not alone. Your story matters. Your voice still counts. And if you've come through something like this, I hope you'll share it in the comments, in a journal, in a room full of people who see you, because silence can be a prison, but it can also be a beginning. If this story stirred something in you, don't keep it in. Share your truth in the comments, like if you've ever had to fight to be heard. Rewatch or send this to someone who needs to remember they're not in the way. And subscribe for more stories from women who refuse to disappear quietly.